Hello everyone, welcome to Deep Sight. I am Lawrence, your time travel navigator, who will analyze the deep connotations behind the event for you. April 2025 is destined to become an important page in history. The world economic structure has fallen into a storm, and all this stems from a major decision made by Trump. He suddenly convened a press conference without any warning and announced to the world that from April 2nd, the United States will impose reciprocal tariffs on its trading partners. This decision is based on two executive orders signed by him, which clearly established a 10% minimum benchmark tariff within the scope of global trading partners, and some trading partners are facing tax rates far exceeding this. As time went by, on April 9th, this highly anticipated policy was officially implemented. What is particularly striking is that the United States also imposed a 104% tariff on China on the same day. Trump named this action Liberation Day and announced that this move is to firmly defend national interests, effectively reduce trade deficits and the return of manufacturing, and aims to completely solve the problem of unfair trade. The introduction of this policy instantly dropped a heavy bomb in the global financial market. On April 3rd, Eastern Time, the three major indexes plummeted. The Nasdaq index fell as much as 5.97% that day, the largest single-day drop since March 2020. The S&P 500 index was also not spared, plummeting 4.84%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged more than 1,600 points, a drop of 3.98%, the largest drop since June 2020. The total market value of the Big Seven tech evaporated a total of $1,034.3 billion on that day, and the people's wealth shrank by a staggering amount. Then, on April 7th, global stock markets ushered in Black Monday. After Wall Street opened, the three major stock indexes went down all the way. Global stock markets spread, and at the close of the day, the main stock indexes in European stock markets all fell by more than 4%. The Nikkei 225 index fell as much as 7.83%. The South Korean Composite Index fell 5.58%, and the Australian S&P 200 index fell 3.89%. The Hong Kong stock market and A-shares in Asia also failed to escape the disaster. The Hang Seng Index fell by 13.22% on the day. The Shanghai Composite Index closed down 7.34%. The Shenzhen Component Index closed down 9.66%, and the Chinext Index closed down 12.5%. The entire global financial market fell into panic and turmoil. From April 2nd to April 9th, the market value of the S&P 500 index evaporated by $5.8 trillion. In addition, the world's 500 richest people lost a total of more than $536 billion in the subsequent stock trading days. Trump's move has undoubtedly aroused widespread attention and strong opposition from the international community. Countries have taken action and taken countermeasures to safeguard their own interests. China, the largest trading partner of the United States, did not adopt a negotiating attitude as in the past, but responded quickly with a strong counterattack. Its National Tariff Commission issued an announcement on April 9th, clarifying that from 12:01 on April 10th, the tariff rate on imported goods originating from the United States will be significantly increased from 34% to 84%. EU member states also voted on the first round of tariff countermeasures against the United States on April 9th, deciding to impose tariffs of up to 25% on a series of American products from April 15th. For a time, global trade relations became increasingly tense, and the smoke of trade war filled the sky over the world economy and the context of today's highly integrated global economy. The butterfly effect of any slight change in tariff policy may trigger a series of unpredictable chain reactions. The tariff war launched by Trump this time has forced countries around the world to re-examine the nature and impact of tariffs as an economic tool. Tariffs, as a tax imposed by a country on goods entering and leaving its national borders or customs borders, have always played an extremely important role in the long process of human economic development. In recent years, the tariff war launched by Trump against the world has not only caused a strong shock in the global economic market, but also pushed tariffs, an economic tool, to the forefront of public opinion. In order to deeply understand the nature, impact, and historical context behind the tariff war, it is necessary to trace the roots, start from the origin of tariffs, systematically sort out the famous tariff wars in history, and deeply analyze their profound impact on politics and economy. Let's talk about the origin of tariffs first. The history of tariffs can be traced back to the distant ancient civilization period. In ancient Egypt, the Nile River runs through the entire country, not only giving birth to the splendid ancient Egyptian civilization, but also becoming an important trade channel, providing a solid foundation for the generation of tariffs. The ancient Egyptians were keenly aware of the importance of trade. They carefully set up checkpoints at important ports and trade nodes along the Nile River and levied a certain percentage of taxes on passing goods. At that time, ancient Egypt had extremely developed agricultural production. The fertile Nile Valley gave birth to rich agricultural products, and the handicraft industry was also quite large. Products such as exquisite linen fabrics and dazzling jewelry were popular in the surrounding areas and became important commodities for foreign trade. Ancient Egypt achieved two goals at one stroke by levying taxes on imported and exported goods. It not only greatly increased fiscal revenue and enriched the treasury, but also cleverly regulated trade to a certain extent, ensuring a stable supply of domestic materials and maintaining orderly economic development. According to historical records, ancient Egypt showed a certain wisdom and flexibility in terms of tax rates. For daily necessities related to people's livelihood, such as food and clothing, the tax rate is maintained at about 5% to 10%. The lower tax rate can not only ensure that the country obtains stable fiscal revenue, but also not excessively burden the lives of ordinary people. For luxury goods from afar, such as precious spices and rare gems, because their consumer groups are mainly the aristocracy, the tax rate is as high as 25% to 30%, which not only helps to increase treasury revenue, but also highlights the scarcity value of luxury goods. For example, for imported scarce metals such as copper and tin, given their importance to the bronze manufacturing industry, Egypt may impose relatively low tariffs to meet the needs of industrial development. While for exported high-quality grains, in order to ensure domestic food security and increase fiscal revenue, higher tariffs may be imposed. Time flies, and we come to the ancient Greek period. Many city-states are scattered around the Mediterranean Sea, and maritime trade is extremely active, like a colorful commercial painting. In order to increase fiscal revenue, maintain the normal operation of the city-state, build magnificent infrastructure, and develop a strong military force, the city-states impose taxes on goods transported through their ports, thus forming the prototype of early tariffs. Take Athens as an example. This important commercial city-state in ancient Greece, its Piraeus port has become an important trade hub in the Mediterranean region. Merchant ships from all over the world gathered here, bringing a rich variety of goods, such as grain from the Black Sea region, Scythian fur, Phoenician glass products, etc. Athens is very meticulous in setting the tax rate for imported goods. For ordinary bulk commodities such as grain, the tax rate is about 8% to 12%. This tax rate is intended to ensure the stability of the city's food supply and obtain certain fiscal benefits. After all, grain is the basis for the survival of urban residents. As for local handicrafts, such as the famous olive oil, fragrant and delicious wine and other export products, the tax is 10% to 15%. This measure can effectively protect local industries and obtain rich profits from foreign trade. This carefully designed tariff system not only provides solid economic support for the city-state, but also cleverly protects local industries to a certain extent. For example, the higher tariffs on imported similar products make locally produced olive oil and wine more competitive in price, which effectively promotes the vigorous development of local-related industries. As the wheel of history rolls forward, the Roman Empire period is coming, and the tariff system has ushered in further development and improvement. With the continuous expansion of Rome's territory, its sphere of influence gradually covered a large area of Europe, North Africa, and West Asia, and its trade network was as dense as a spider web and spread all over the country. The Roman Empire carefully set up checkpoints on its borders and important transportation routes to impose tariffs on imported and exported goods. Rome's tariff system is relatively complex, and the army has become an important guarantee for tax collection. It not only levies taxes based on the type, quantity, and value of goods, but also comprehensively considers the source and destination of goods. In terms of tax rates, the Roman Empire has demonstrated a unique strategy. For basic materials such as grain and timber shipped from relatively backward areas within the empire to core areas such as Rome, In order to ensure sufficient supply of materials in large cities, the empire may give a lower tax rate of 5% to 8%. After all, these materials are the basis for the operation of cities. For luxury goods imported from outside the empire, such as Chinese silk and Indian spices, because they are scarce and deeply loved by the nobles, the tax rate is as high as 25% to 40%. Through this tariff policy, the empire obtained huge fiscal revenues, which were used to maintain a large army, build magnificent public works, and pay for the expenses of the bureaucracy, ensuring the stable operation of the empire. At the same time, tariff policy has also become an important means to regulate economic relations between different regions within the empire. For example, for agricultural products shipped from the marginal areas of the empire to Rome, certain tariff preferences may be given to ensure the supply of materials in the capital, while for the import of certain luxury goods, high tariffs are imposed to control consumption and balance trade, and maintain the relative balance of the economy within the empire. With the rise of the Germans and the decline of Rome, Europe entered a long, dark Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, Europe was politically in a relatively fragmented state. However, tariffs were still an important means for feudal territories and city-states to obtain income. Like dragons guarding treasures, feudal lords set up checkpoints at key locations such as the borders, bridges, and ferries of their territories, and levied tolls on passing caravans, which to a certain extent could be considered a variant of tariffs. With the rise of cities and the recovery of commerce, city-states followed suit and levied taxes on imported and exported goods. Take the city-states of Venice and Genoa in Italy as an example. Because they were uniquely located as important transit points for trade between the East and the West, as key nodes on major transportation routes, the tariff rates for luxury goods such as spices and silk from the East were often as high as 30% to 50%. These luxury goods were extremely in short supply in the European market. Despite the high tariffs, they did not significantly suppress demand. Instead, they were like a constant source of wealth, bringing huge profits to the cities. For wool textiles and metal products exported from Europe, the tax rates were around 15% to 25%, so as to protect local industries while obtaining considerable profits from trade. These cities accumulated huge wealth by imposing high tariffs on passing goods, just like merchants who became rich overnight, which promoted the prosperity and development of the cities and made them the shining stars of the medieval European economy. Since the 7th century AD, the Arab Empire has risen, its territory spanning 3 continents, and important trade routes such as the Silk Road run through it. With its unique geographical location, the Arab region has become a trade hub connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. Arab merchants are active in various places, shipping luxury goods such as silk, spices, and porcelain from the East to Europe, and selling European metal products, furs, and other commodities to the East. In such a prosperous trade background, the tariff system of Arab countries has gradually taken shape. Arab countries impose tariffs on passing caravans and imports and exports. The objects of taxation cover a wide range, whether it is a camel caravan crossing the desert by land or a merchant ship traveling between the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and other seas. All must pay taxes according to regulations. In terms of setting tax rates, there is a certain degree of flexibility and pertinence. For daily necessities, such as food, the tax rate is relatively low, usually 5% to 10%, to ensure the basic living needs of the people and avoid the impact of soaring prices caused by excessive tariffs on people's livelihood. For luxury goods, such as fine silk from China and rare spices from Southeast Asia, the tax rate is as high as 20% to 30%. This is because the luxury consumer group is mainly aristocrats and wealthy businessmen. Higher tax rates can increase fiscal revenue without directly impacting the lives of ordinary people. At the same time, it also highlights the precious attributes of luxury goods. The tariffs collected play an important role in the economic and social development of Arab countries. In terms of finance, tariff revenue enriches the treasury and provides financial support for the country to maintain a huge administrative system and build infrastructure, such as mosques, palaces, roads, etc. In terms of trade regulation, through tax rate adjustments, Arab countries can guide trade flows and encourage or restrict the import and export of specific commodities. For example, preferential tax rates are given to the import of certain strategic materials to ensure domestic supply. For the export of commodities with national characteristics and advantages, Tariffs are appropriately reduced to enhance their competitiveness in the international market. In addition, tariff revenue is also used to support military force construction, protect the safety of trade routes, ensure the safe passage of caravans and merchant ships within the vast empire, and further promote the prosperity and development of trade. The rise of the Mongol Empire broke the world trade pattern, and the thousand-year-long trade routes between Europe and Asia underwent tremendous changes. In the early days of the establishment of the Mongol Empire, due to the emphasis on commercial trade, a tariff system began to gradually form. At that time, the empire had a vast territory, connecting many regions of the Eurasian continent. In order to manage trade activities and increase fiscal revenue, checkpoints were set up in various important trade routes and cities, and tariffs were levied on passing caravans and goods. The types and tax rates of Mongolian tariffs were also very complicated. Commodity taxes were the main part of the tariffs of the Mongol Empire, and various commodities were levied at a certain ratio. Generally speaking, the tax rates for luxury goods such as spices, silk, and jewelry are relatively high, which may reach about 10% to 20%, because these commodities are of high value and are mostly in demand by the nobility and the wealthy. For some necessities of life, such as food and cloth, the tax rate is relatively low, usually around 5% to 10%, in order to ensure the basic living needs of ordinary people, while also promoting active trade and the stability of the political and economic order. Transit tax is also an important tax implemented by the Mongol Empire after it controlled a large number of trade routes. For foreign caravans passing through its territory, a transit tax will be levied. The tax rate varies according to factors such as the size of the caravan, the type of goods, and the distance of the journey. For example, a caravan from Europe to China via Central Asia needs to pay a certain transit tax when passing through different regions of the Mongol Empire, which is generally 5% to 15% of the value of the goods. The management and collection of tariffs in ancient times was a very difficult task. A strong army was an important weapon for implementation. The Mongol Empire established special tax agencies and officials to be responsible for the management and collection of tariffs. Tax officials were stationed in important trade cities and transportation routes, such as Samarkand and Tabriz. These tax officials have undergone special training and are familiar with tariff laws and tax procedures. They would inspect passing caravans, verify the type, quantity, and value of the goods, and then collect tariffs at the prescribed rate. In order to ensure the fairness and accuracy of taxation, a strict accounting record and auditing system was established to prevent corruption and fraud by tax officials. Tariffs brought rich financial revenue to the Mongol Empire, which was used to maintain the empire's huge army, build infrastructure, and support the development of culture and art. At the same time, tariff policies also promoted economic exchanges and trade between different regions within the empire. By imposing different tariffs on different commodities, it guided the rational allocation of resources and encouraged certain regions to develop characteristic industries. For example, in Central Asia, due to the high demand for silk, the Mongol Empire was able to attract more than 100 million people. The emphasis on silk trade and the relatively low tariff policy have greatly developed local silk production and trade, making it one of the important silk-producing areas of the empire. The tariff system of the Mongol Empire has promoted the development of trade and economic prosperity to a certain extent, and played an important role in the stability and development of the empire. However, with the division and political turmoil in the late empire, the tariff system has gradually been affected, and problems such as chaos and corruption have emerged, which have hindered economic development to a certain extent. The tariff system of the Eastern Roman Empire, which we often call the Byzantine Empire, is relatively complex. It has an extremely complex tariff system. During its heyday, the empire controlled important trade routes and imposed various taxes and fees on imported and exported goods. Port tariffs are its most important source of income, and its main tariff collection points are concentrated in various ports of the empire, such as Constantinople, which is today's Istanbul. This is an important Eurasian connection point and trade route, which can be compared with today's Strait of Malacca. Merchant ships from all over the Mediterranean gathered here, and port tariffs were one of the important sources of fiscal revenue for the empire. There are different tax rates for different types of goods. For example, higher tariffs are imposed on luxury goods such as silk and spices, while the tax rates are relatively low for some necessities of life. The trade policy of the empire will be constantly adjusted according to the political and economic situation, which will also affect the collection of tariffs. sometimes in order to protect the country's handicrafts and commerce. Tariffs on certain imported goods will be increased to reduce competition from foreign goods. After signing a trade agreement with other countries, certain tariff preferences may be given to goods from specific countries to promote trade. In 1492, the Ottoman Empire completely captured Constantinople. The establishment of the Ottoman Turkish Empire broke the land connection between Eurasia, and he established a relatively complete tariff system. The empire set up numerous checkpoints and tax stations on its vast territory to tax passing goods. The high various taxes made it unbearable for merchants. The Ottoman Empire attached equal importance to land and sea tariffs. It not only levied tariffs at coastal ports, but also set up checkpoints on important trade routes on land. For example, on the trade routes connecting Eurasia, tariffs are levied on the transported goods at a certain rate. The empire has clear tariff regulations for imported and exported goods. The tariffs on imported goods are generally determined according to the value and type of the goods. Exported goods are also subject to corresponding taxes and fees, but for some commodities in which the country has advantages, the export tariffs may be relatively low to encourage trade. In the Ottoman Empire, religious and social factors also have a certain impact on tariffs. For example, there may be special tariff policies for some special commodities related to religious rituals or cultural traditions. In addition, the empire also has different regulations for the trade activities of different social classes and business groups, which will also be reflected in the collection of tariffs to a certain extent. For example, for some privileged business guilds or merchants, certain tariff reductions or preferential treatment may be given. Then the Ottoman Empire did not make the country rich and strong because of the implementation of various tariffs. The dream of living a rich life by lying in the comfort zone and collecting taxes gradually shattered in the next few hundred years, because the Europeans who were forced to go to desperate places took another road to prosperity. The advent of the age of exploration, the rise of the Renaissance, and the development of science have completely changed the pattern of world trade and also prompted profound changes in the tariff system. Humans finally discovered that the Earth is round. As European countries embarked on overseas exploration and colonial expansion, international trade became more frequent and complex, like a complex picture of interests and disputes. In order to protect their own industries, increase fiscal revenue, and gain an advantage in international trade competition, countries have shown their magical powers and continuously improved their tariff systems. Countries began to set different tariff rates in a targeted manner according to their own economic interests. For industries that can be produced and need protection in the country, such as the textile industry and manufacturing industry, high tariffs are imposed to increase the price of imported goods and reduce their competitiveness in the domestic market, thereby creating favorable conditions for the development of similar industries in the country and building a solid protective wall for domestic industries. On the contrary, for some scarce raw materials in the country, such as cotton and rubber, lower tariffs are often imposed to ensure that related industries can obtain sufficient and reasonably priced raw material supplies, promote the sustainable development of the industry, and ensure the lifeline of industrial development. This period laid the foundation for the formation of today's world trade pattern and tariff system. Throughout the history of the world's development for thousands of years, tariffs have played an important role in the direct trade relations between countries. Due to various contradictions, serious tariff wars may also break out. The tariff war triggered by the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in the United States in 1930 is one of them. In 1929, the United States suffered the most serious economic depression in history, and the nightmare enveloped the entire country. On October 24th, the day known as Black Thursday by later generations, the Wall Street stock market collapsed instantly, and the market value evaporated by $14 billion in a very short period of time. The S&P index plummeted from 31 points to 21 points like a free fall, a drop of 32%. Subsequently, industrial production suffered a heavy blow, shrinking by 27% in just 1 year. The chimneys of the once prosperous Pittsburgh steel plant no longer smoked and fell into silence. Detroit's automobile production line was also forced to shut down, and there was a depression. Agriculture was also not spared and suffered a heavy blow. The price of wheat plummeted from $1.30 per bushel to 60 cents. Farmers in Kansas fell into the abyss of despair and even burned crops in anger to express their dissatisfaction in such a severe economic predicament. President Herbert Hoover, facing the numerous holes in the economy, made a far-reaching decision. He ignored the warnings of 1,028 economists who jointly wrote a letter warning that trade barriers will bring disaster to the country, and resolutely signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act on June 17, 1930. This bill can be called a blockbuster in the history of U.S. tariffs. It increased the average tariff of more than 20,000 imported goods from 38% in the 1920s to 59.1%, setting a record high in the history of U.S. tariffs. The original intention of this bill was to protect U.S. domestic industries by raising tariffs, reduce imports, and encourage Americans to buy more domestic products, thereby realizing the beautiful vision of revitalizing the economy. However, reality has dealt a heavy blow to the country. This move by the government ignited a political powder keg and triggered retaliatory actions around the world. Richard Bennett, the then Prime Minister of Canada, held an emergency meeting in Ottawa and angrily denounced the United States for betrayal. Just 2 days later, he quickly imposed tariffs of 30% to 50% on 16 categories of American goods, including eggs, timber, and wheat, involving an amount of up to $200 million. Britain also passed the Import Tariff Act in 1932, imposing a 20% tariff on American machinery and textiles. London dock workers even angrily burned American cotton in protest. France raised the automobile tariff to 45%, and large-scale demonstrations broke out in the streets of Paris. Demonstrators smashed Ford cars and shouted, "Get out of here, Americans!" The result of this tariff war was disastrous, like a huge economic tsunami sweeping the world. By 1933, global trade volume had plummeted from $36 billion in 1929 to $12 billion, a shrinkage of 66%. The United States itself was not spared from this storm. Exports fell from $5.2 billion to $1.6 billion, and imports fell from $4.4 billion to $1.2 billion. Although the trade deficit was almost zero as expected, the domestic economy was almost paralyzed. The unemployment rate soared to 25%, 13 million Americans lost their livelihoods, and the inflation rate turned to a vicious deflation of minus 10.3%. A wave of bank failures swept across the country. 9,000 banking institutions went bankrupt, and deposits evaporated by $7 billion. However, during the 1932 campaign, Hoover still insisted that prosperity is coming when he gave a speech in Detroit, but the hungry people in the audience angrily threw rotten apples at him. In the end, he lost to Roosevelt by an overwhelming disadvantage. This tariff war also became a painful memory in the history of the American economy. In the 1960s, the European Economic Community, EEC, the predecessor of the European Union, imposed a tariff of 13 cents per pound on American chicken in order to protect local agriculture, accounting for 25% of the price at the time. Just because of this small 13 cents, American poultry exporters lost about $26 million. Why did such an incident happen in the US-European alliance? There are deep-seated reasons behind it. After World War II, Europe was committed to economic reconstruction. Farmers in countries such as France and Germany complained that the influx of cheap American chicken had seriously impacted the local market. So Brussels decided to use the weapon of tariff barriers. The government was furious about this, and Kennedy's cabinet immediately broke out into a fierce quarrel. Agriculture Secretary Orville Freeman even threatened to resign, claiming that this is a betrayal of American farmers. Commerce Secretary Luther Hodges insisted on taking retaliatory measures. On December 4, 1962, the United States announced a 25% tariff on Volkswagen, French brandy, and Dutch potatoes in Europe, and the amount involved was equal to the loss of chicken. At the press conference, the U.S. trade delegation also displayed a frozen chicken, joking that it is more dangerous than a missile, which immediately sparked heated public debate and became a topic of conversation on the streets. The conflict escalated rapidly. U.S. chicken exports to Europe fell from $45 million in 1961 to $20 million in 1963, a drop of 55%. Poultry plants in Arkansas had to lay off 20% of their employees, and many workers lost their jobs. In Europe, Volkswagen sales to the United States fell by 10% in early 1963, from 220,000 to 200,000 vehicles. The Wolfsburg plant in Germany was forced to reduce production, and the roar of machines on the production line gradually weakened. French brandy exports shrank by 15%, and Bordeaux wine merchants were furious, burning the American flag at the dock and shouting, "Let Kennedy drink his Coke." However, overall, the economic impact of this chicken war was relatively limited and was just a small episode in history. At that time, global trade volume was $135 billion in 1962, with only a slight fluctuation and a loss of only a few $100 million. The U.S. inflation rate remained at 1.2%, the unemployment rate dropped from 6.7% to 5.5%, and the economy was still on the track of post-war prosperity. The European inflation rate rose slightly to 2%, and German industrial production still maintained a 5% growth. In July 1963, after 3 rounds of difficult negotiations, the European Economic Community reduced the chicken tariff to 10 cents, and the United States also withdrew its retaliatory measures. At the negotiating table, the U.S. delegation brought a plate of roast chicken, jokingly calling it a symbol of peace, and the German representative gave back a bottle of Rhine white wine. The atmosphere eased dramatically, and the tariff conflict came to a temporary end. In the 1980s, Japan's economy rose rapidly and became the world's second-largest economy after the United States. It posed a strong challenge to the United States in many fields such as automobiles, electronics, and steel. With its advantages of high quality and low fuel consumption, Japanese cars have flooded into the U.S. market in large numbers, impacting the U.S. domestic automobile industry. In 1980, Japanese cars accounted for 21.3% of the U.S. market, while the market share of the 3 major U.S. auto giants, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, continued to decline and fell into trouble. In order to protect its own industries, the government has taken a series of tariff measures to build a line of defense. In 1981, the United States and Japan reached a voluntary export restriction agreement, requiring Japan to limit the number of automobile exports to the United States. At the same time, the United States imposed tariffs on electronic products, steel, and other products imported from Japan. Japan was not to be outdone and took corresponding countermeasures, such as strengthening the protection of its own industries and increasing efforts to open up markets in other countries. The 2 sides went back and forth, and the trade war gradually heated up. This trade war has had a significant impact on the economies of both the United States and Japan. The U.S. auto industry has gained a respite to a certain extent, and has gradually restored some competitiveness through technological upgrades and industrial adjustments. However, American consumers have to pay higher prices for imported cars and related products, and the cost of living has increased significantly. The Japanese economy has suffered a certain impact, export growth has slowed down, and economic growth is facing pressure. The Japanese economy, which once sang along, has slowed down significantly under the shadow of the trade war. In response to the trade war, Japan has accelerated the pace of industrial upgrading, increased its investment in research and development in high-tech industries, and gradually transformed from traditional manufacturing to high-end manufacturing and service industries, trying to open up a new field and find new economic growth points. In 1999, trade conflicts broke out again between the United States and Europe, and a trade dispute over bananas and steel collided fiercely. The European Union has formulated an import policy that favors banana producers in Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, granting preferential tariff treatment to bananas from these regions, while imposing high tariffs on Central American banana exporters supported by the United States. The United States believes that this EU policy violates the rules of the World Trade Organization and harms the interests of American banana exporters. In response, the United States imposed a 100% tariff on a variety of EU products, including French cheese, German coffee machines, Italian tomato juice, etc., involving an amount of up to $191 million. In addition, the United States also imposed high tariffs on steel products imported from the European Union to protect its own steel industry. The European Union has implemented retaliatory tariff measures on some U.S. products, and the 2 sides have been going back and forth and refusing to give in. This trade dispute not only affected the trade relationship between the United States and Europe, causing a sharp decline in the trade volume between the 2 sides and a freezing point in the atmosphere of cooperation, but also had an impact on the global banana and steel markets. Banana prices fluctuated violently in the international market, and the supply chain of the steel industry was also seriously disrupted. Many companies that rely on steel raw materials are facing production difficulties. The two sides conducted many negotiations and consultations under the framework of the WTO. After a long and arduous game, they finally gradually eased the trade conflict through compromise and adjustment of relevant policies, and the tense situation was eased. Through historical review, we should be very clear about the profound impact of the tariff war on the political economy. Its economic impact is reflected in the following aspects. 1. Impact on domestic prices. Taking the tariff war initiated by Trump as an example, the imposition of tariffs on imported goods will inevitably lead to an increase in the prices of these goods after entering the U.S. market. If a 25% tariff is imposed on imported cars, the price of an imported car originally priced at $30,000 may become $37,500 after the tax is added. Consumers have to pay higher fees to purchase such goods, which in turn drives up the overall domestic prices and exacerbates inflationary pressures. A senior researcher at the Peterson Institute for International Economics in the United States pointed out that the Trump administration's reciprocal tariff policy will increase the U.S. inflation rate by 1.5 percentage points. Rising prices not only reduce consumers' actual purchasing power and make people's money less valuable, but may also cause social instability, affect the quality of life of residents, and significantly increase people's living costs. Point 2. Impact on enterprises. For companies that rely on imported raw materials, tariffs increase their production costs and put a heavy yoke on the companies. Take mobile phone manufacturers as an example. If many of their components are imported from abroad, the cost of components will rise sharply after the tariffs are raised. Companies face a dilemma: either bear the costs themselves, which will lead to reduced profits and compressed living space, or pass the costs on to consumers, increase product prices, and weaken market competitiveness and lose market share. The U.S. auto industry has suffered greatly. Due to the increase in tariffs on imported auto parts, the costs of automakers have risen sharply, and they are facing huge operating pressure. Many auto companies have had to cut spending and even lay off employees to maintain operations. In addition, the trade policy uncertainty brought about by the tariff war has made companies more cautious in investment decisions and reduced the scale of investment, which is extremely unfavorable to the long-term growth of the economy. The reduction in corporate investment means a slowdown in activities such as the construction of new production facilities and technology research and development investment, which in turn affects industrial upgrading and the improvement of innovation capabilities, hindering the sustainable development of the economy. 3. Impact on international trade. The tariff war has seriously hindered the normal development of international trade. When a country raises tariffs, other countries often take retaliatory measures to increase tariffs on that country. This will lead to a sharp decline in trade volume between countries. For example, the tariff war triggered by the U.S. Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in 1930 caused a sharp drop in U.S.-EU trade volume by 2/3, and global trade suffered a heavy blow. The obstruction of international trade has made it impossible to effectively allocate global resources, reduce production efficiency, and affect the overall development of the world economy. Countries are unable to give full play to their comparative advantages, and specialized production and division of labor are undermined, leading to a slowdown in global economic growth and a serious slowdown in the pace of world economic development. The core of the tariff issue is not only the economic impact, but also the corresponding political impact, which is mainly reflected in the following aspects. 1. Tense international relations. Tariff wars are very likely to cause contradictions and conflicts between countries, destroy the originally good international relations, and are enough to sever the ties of friendly cooperation between countries. Throughout history, the tariff war launched by Trump has surpassed any documented case in history, which can be said to be unprecedented and unparalleled. This has made the United States tense with many trade partners. The United States' image and reputation in the international community may be seriously damaged, and he has been accused of undermining the global free trade system. This tense international relationship not only affects bilateral and multilateral trade cooperation, but may also trigger chain reactions in the political, military, and other fields, posing a threat to global peace and stability and making the world situation more turbulent. 2. Intensified domestic political differences. Domestically, tariff policies often cause differences between different interest groups. Those who support tariff policies are usually practitioners of protected industries and related interest groups who hope to protect their jobs and profits and safeguard their economic interests through tariffs. However, consumers and companies that rely on imported raw materials are firmly opposed to tariffs because they will increase their living and operating costs. This disagreement is manifested politically as fierce debates between different political factions, affecting the stability and unity of domestic politics. When formulating tariff policies, the government needs to seek a balance between different interest groups. If it is not handled properly, it may cause social instability and lead to intensified social contradictions. In summary, the tariff war seems to be an economic means taken by a country to pursue its own interests, but from historical experience and actual impact, it often brings many negative effects and has a serious impact on the global political and economic landscape. In-depth research on the origin, history, and impact of the tariff war will help us better understand the complexity of international trade rules and international relations, provide useful reference for coping with current and future economic challenges, and enable us to make more wise decisions in the complex and changing world economic tide and avoid repeating the mistakes of history. Dear viewers, this is our content today. A peaceful, friendly, and fair society is the common goal that mankind strives for. Learning from people can help us understand gains and losses, and learning from history can help us understand the rise and fall of nations. You are welcome to follow, like, and comment. Leave your opinions. Learn together and make progress together. See you next time.